Today we are going to explain an American action thriller movie called Red. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. Our story begins with Frank Moses, an ordinary man leading a quiet, solitary life. His mornings are predictable, a cup of coffee and a session with his punching bag. However, one day, something unusual arrives in his mailbox, a pension check from the government. Confused and concerned about the missing check, Frank contacts the pension office and speaks to Sarah Rose, an employee. Frustration sets in, and he tears up the check while explaining his non-receipt to Sarah. She quickly apologizes and assures him that a replacement check will be sent. In an attempt to lighten the conversation, Frank asks about Sarah's day. She reveals her longing for travel and her current read, an exciting book about a supermodel couple recruited by the CIA to thwart an assassin in Milan. Their chat concludes on friendly terms. Later that evening, Frank decides to read the book recommended by Sarah. However, his peaceful night takes an unexpected turn when he awakens early in the morning, sensing armed intruders in his home. A swift, intense battle unfolds, with Frank skillfully defending himself and even setting a clever trap in his kitchen. Once the mercenaries are defeated, Frank leaves his home, and the scene transitions to Sarah. She's being driven home by an unusual date, but inside her apartment, she admits to herself that she has no intention of seeing the guy again. Out of nowhere, Frank appears in her apartment, catching her off guard. Sarah insists that he leave, but Frank surprises her by packing her bag and tidying up her place. He then shares unsettling news. Someone is trying to kill him, and she's now a target due to their phone conversations. Confused and frightened, Sarah raises her voice, and Frank tries to reassure her. He then kidnaps her and puts her into his car. He hopes they can find some adventure in this crisis, and even asks about their dinner plans. Meanwhile, a man named William Cooper prepares for a sinister mission and meets a mysterious woman who assigns him a new target, a retired CIA analyst residing in New Orleans. Back at the motel, Frank takes precautionary measures by securing Sarah to a bed. He reveals his CIA affiliation, but Sarah remains skeptical. As they talk, Sarah's striking eyes catch Frank's attention, and he compliments her. He shares that he needs to contact someone urgently. Elsewhere, a man named Joe encounters technical issues with his TV. Frank intervenes, chastising him for his inappropriate behavior and revealing evidence of a harrowing attack he recently endured. Joe makes a crucial call, informing Frank that the same assailants who targeted him also murdered a New York Times reporter named Stephanie Chang. Simultaneously, Hooper discovers a pension check among Frank's belongings. In a parallel scene, Sarah manages to free herself and unknowingly triggers a 911 call on her phone. A police officer arrives, and Sarah follows him, only to be abducted and injected with a mysterious substance. Suddenly, Frank reappears to rescue her, and they escape in a police car. As the effects of the injection take hold, Sarah, in her altered state, comments on Frank's handsome appearance. Their journey takes an uncertain turn as a car crashes into them. Frank confronts Cooper, demonstrating his CIA prowess before the police arrest Cooper. Sarah, awakening, acknowledges Frank's CIA identity and thanks him for saving her. In Chinatown, Frank buys duct tape, raising Sarah's concerns about his duct taping tendencies. They meet Stephanie Chang's mother, who shows them a card with mysterious numbers, sparking their investigation. Frank deciphers the numbers as a classification for Asian literature, impressing Sarah with his Chinese language skills. They find a book listing names, mostly deceased under suspicious circumstances, except one. A call reveals that the survivor has also been murdered. Cooper is introduced to the records keeper, who unveils Frank's redacted files and reveals Frank's past as a highly effective CIA agent labeled Red, retired extremely dangerous. Frank explains the need to locate Marvin Boggs. Sarah and Frank find Marvin, who leads them to his hidden residence and expresses his paranoia about surveillance. The group discusses their shared mission in Guatemala and their mysterious pursuers. Despite initial suspicions of Marvin on Sarah, Sarah remains part of the team. They learn that Singer, a man on their list, will be at the airport terminal. There, Marvin mistakenly apprehends a woman, but Frank confirms she's harmless. Then not long after they meet Singer, Singer discloses his lack of cooperation with a reporter regarding Guatemala, and they spot the ominous helicopter N9748C. Singer is shot, and they realize they are targeted by Cooper. A firefight ensues, with Marvin's expert marksmanship saving them from a rocket launcher-wielding woman. Marvin suggests seeking significant assistance to uncover the truth, hinting at a perilous endeavor. Frank decides to embark on this mission alone. Frank arrives at the Russian embassy and is apprehended by soldiers. A Russian named Ivan expresses his long-standing desire to kill Frank, but surprisingly, they share vodka and make a toast. Ivan admits he hasn't killed anyone in years, and Frank remarks on the sadness of this fact. Frank reveals his plan to break into the CIA and offers Ivan a favor he can't refuse. Sarah excitedly joins the mission. In the elevator, she intentionally drops Frank's contact lens to trigger an alarm, enlisting the soldiers' help to find it. Frank uses this distraction to pass a security check. They reach a secret floor, and Frank opens a locked door using an unconventional method. They meet the records keeper, Henry, who assists Frank in locating the Guatemala files. Henry mentions a man named Cooper with distinctive hair who had been searching for Frank's file. Frank warns Henry about Cooper's intentions. Frank confronts Cooper, and a fight ensues. Frank dislocates Cooper's arm, but is shot in the shoulder before triggering a fire alarm. He reunites with Sarah and concocts a chemical explosion, escaping the CIA building in an ambulance. Cooper's boss is displeased with his failure to eliminate Frank and questions why Frank deserves to be targeted. Sarah worries about Frank's bleeding wound, but he insists they must go to Eagle's Nest. Despite Marvin's concerns, they arrive at Eagle's Nest. Frank meets Victoria, a woman in the house, and assures her he's not there to harm her. Victoria tends to Frank's gunshot wound, and the team discusses their next move. Joe points out that Dunning, a gangster, is alive and under CIA protection. Frank suggests visiting Dunning, and Victoria agrees to join him. Cooper checks on his family, and his boss informs him that Frank has a new target. The team, now including Victoria, disguises themselves and arrives at Dunning's home. Victoria spots CIA surveillance in the woods. Dunning and Joe retreat to a soundproof room to conduct their business secretly, away from prying CIA ears. As they talk, there's a knock on the door, and Dunning assumes it's his guards. But when he opens it, he's confronted by Frank, who quickly renders him unconscious. Outside, Sarah engages in a conversation about Frank with Victoria, who reveals that she once loved an agent but was ordered by MI6 to kill him to prove her loyalty. She confesses to putting 3 bullets in his chest. Inside, Frank and his team question Dunning about who he helped escape from Guatemala. Dunning, terrified, admits that he aided a young lieutenant, the son of the current vice president. When asked about the New York Times reporter, he explains that she had contacted him twice, leading him to call the vice president, was now trying to cover up his past. Suddenly, Victoria alerts them that they've been discovered. Cooper arrives with his agents surrounding the area. Joe knocks Dunning unconscious, and then Cooper calls them, urging them to surrender. Frank reveals the vice president's involvement in covering up war crimes in Guatemala, which Cooper initially doubts. Despite his skepticism, Cooper promises their safety and vows to ensure they can testify. Victoria suggests creating a distraction to escape to the woods, and Joe acknowledges that someone will need to make a difficult choice. Frank hugs Joe, saying it's been an honor. As they exit, Cooper orders his agents not to open fire. However, an agent disobeys and shoots the person who emerges from the house, infuriating and confusing Cooper. He rushes forward, only to find out that it's not Frank. Frank and Marvin manage to escape, while Victoria provides cover for their retreat. Sarah stumbles and falls, getting apprehended by agents. Victoria returns to inform the others that the CIA has taken Sarah. Ivan suddenly appears in a car. Later, the team toasts to Joe, and Victoria emphasizes the need to expose the vice president's war crimes. Marvin expresses concern about Sarah's possible torture if they proceed. Frank leaves, upset, and Victoria scolds Marvin for his attitude. Ivan approaches Frank, revealing 3 bullet wounds in his chest from a past love, illustrating how love can drive people to do crazy things. During Sarah's interrogation, Cooper receives a call from Frank, who threatens to harm Cooper's family if anything happens to Sarah. Frank vows to kill the vice president. Back at the CIA, Cooper discovers the list of deceased individuals and the Guatemala file in his living room, both left by Frank. Cooper informs his superior that he'll need to assist the Secret Service in protecting the vice president. Meanwhile, Frank tells Marvin that he's prepared for the upcoming mission, and Marvin anticipates that the vice president will be in for a surprise. At a lively gala, Cooper assists the Secret Service while the team prepares to take down the vice president. After the vice president delivers his speech, Ivan invites Victoria to dance, complimenting her radiance. As the music stops, Ivan discreetly disperses a substance throughout the room. Victoria uses a special necklace to lock a door, then joins Marvin. Ivan suddenly detects a gas leak and triggers the fire alarm. The vice president and the Secret Service attempt to leave but find the door blocked. They head for their cars, but Victoria opens fire, destroying their vehicles. Cooper struggles to reach them but eventually reaches a vacant heavy machine gun. Meanwhile, the Secret Service is once again thwarted by Victoria, with assistance from Marvin. As the Secret Service tries to escape with the vice president, Marvin remarks that they used to be tougher. They come under fire, and sadly, Victoria is wounded. Marvin creates a diversion using smoke grenades, allowing them to escape. Victoria, realizing her injuries make her a liability, urges Marvin to leave her behind. Victoria tries to exit on her own but becomes stuck. The police close in and Ivan appears, assisting her in opening the door. She expresses her love for him, and he reciprocates. Outside, the vice president and Secret Service spot Marvin approaching wearing a suicide vest. They flee, and as a presidential car arrives, the vice president boards it. Cooper arrives, shouting for the car to stop, but is ignored. Suddenly, the driver turns out to be Frank, chasing after them. Afterward, the vice president awakens, and Frank mentions his presence in Guatemala and witnessing the vice president's actions, which reduces the vice president to tears. Frank contacts Cooper and gives him 15 minutes to bring Sarah to a nearby power plant, or he'll kill the vice president. Cooper informs his boss about the situation and requests alerting the Secret Service. When Cooper arrives at the power plant, he finds Sarah, but no Secret Service agents are present. Curious about the situation, Cooper watches as Denning shoots the vice president. Frank proposes to release Sarah in exchange for his life. Sarah acknowledges Frank tearing up those checks to talk to her. Denning instructs Cooper to handcuff Frank, which he does. However, sensing deception from his boss and Denning, Cooper surreptitiously hands the key to Frank. Denning announces that the world will learn Frank shot the vice president and Sarah, but Frank walks toward them. Cooper shoots his boss, and Denning also falls under gunfire. Frank then crushes Denning's throat. The rest of the team emerges from the shadows, and Frank embraces Sarah. He thanks Cooper, who assures him that he will handle everything. Suddenly, Marvin fires a shot at a lifeless body and asks if anyone wants pancakes. On the car ride home, the team celebrates their freedom from pursuit. Ivan reminds Frank that he owes him a favor, explaining it involves a tiny little nuclear problem in Moldova. Sarah asks if they can leave, and Frank agrees. They share a kiss. In the final scene, Marvin comments on his dislike for Moldova while he and Frank are getting shot at from behind by a large number of troops. Subscribe to see more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.